Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers.
A hypo in your hair. Now, how many years have I been telling you that this city is filthier than third world cities I have visited? That the roads, because of corruption and the stealing of highway funds, are more broken than those of third world countries, at least many years. Well, finally, because I've been screaming about this long enough, the local NBC Bay Area news station was shamed. I shamed them into taking one of their sound trucks out and doing something other than attacking Trump. And guess what they found out? They found out that this city, this once beautiful city, the most beautiful city in America, has now descended because of liberalism. They don't say that, of course. Because of tolerance. They don't say that, of course. Because of vermin in the legal profession who eliminated laws about vagrancy. Because of those reasons, this city has become a city riddled with hypodermic needles, feces, and urine. And I've been warning you for years. We're going to talk today about the meltdown of the United States of America as exemplified by New York City and San Francisco, but not limited to them, in tolerating armies of vagrants and welfare bums, because this was not always the way this country was run, nor should it be the way this country is run at all. And I do have a solution to the problem of the filth, the dirt, the disease that is spreading. Moreover, I'll go a step further, as I have today. Unless the vast armies of bums, the vagrants, the criminals, the drug addicts, are removed from our cities and put into facilities 100 miles away from cities against their will, where they will be forced to clean up and work. Unless that is done, I'm warning you that the next step is typhus and the plague, which will be the next epidemics that will spread in this country. You say it can't happen here? It is happening here. It is happening here. Because you see, when fecal matter dries in the street, it's a disgusting topic, isn't it? Isn't it disgusting that I have to talk about fecal matter in a city? I've been warning about you for years. How dirty is San Francisco? An NBC Bay Area investigation reveals a dangerous mix of drug needles, garbage, and feces. But if you read the actual story, which I hope you do, linked up on michaelsavage.com, of course, where we find the best news of the world and try to bring it to your attention, you will find out that this is not a joke. It's not limited to a few streets. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not blowing it up out of proportion. Now, this show is based upon a motto of borders, language, and culture. Because of me, Trump is cracking down on the illegal aliens in this country. That's right, because of me. Bush not only ignored the issue of borders, he vilified me for bringing up borders. But now we're dealing with an issue of culture, the meltdown of our entire cultural heritage. And so San Francisco is the epitome of this. A 20-mile stretch of this city, schools, playgrounds, a police station. And guess what they finally found? What I have found for years, because I actually go out in the streets. Children are saying, we see poop, we see pee, we see needles, we see trash. But you see, it's not just looking at it, Nancy. Nancy said nothing. Diane said nothing. Jerry says nothing. You see, they're too busy trying to undo the election. They don't have time to clean up the city in which they live. They never walk in the city. You think Nancy Pelosi walks in downtown San Francisco? Are you crazy? Do you think Jerry Brown walks in San Francisco? Are you nuts? You leave that to the children they love so much. The little children, the third worlders who are in the city, the little children of any race, any heritage, 3 years old, 2 years old, human waste, needles. Children are walking past needles, looking at them. I've been telling you about this for years and years and years. Large heaps of garbage, streets of San Francisco. discarded junk, 100 drug needles, 300 piles of human feces throughout downtown. Not dog feces. Human dogs. Human dogs. And what do the doctors have to say about that? Dr. Lee Riley, an infectious disease expert at UC Berkeley, warned that once fecal matter dries, it can become airborne, releasing potentially dangerous viruses, such as the rotavirus. And he says if you happen to inhale that, it can also go into your intestine. The results can prove fatal, especially in children. Riley has researched conditions across the poorest slums of the world. His book is entitled Slum Health, and he said that parts of the city may be dirtier than slums in some developing countries. Why is that? He said the contamination in San Francisco is much greater than communities in Brazil or Kenya or India. Did you hear what I just said to you, Nancy? Can you hear me now? Jerry, can you hear me now? The world now knows you've created a slum because of your liberalism. Yes, liberalism is a mental disorder, and a very dangerous one at that. But do you think this will change anything? Here is a moron named Supervisor Hillary Ronan. Never heard of her, but she looks like a typical do-gooder with no brains between her ears. And she said the solution to cleaning up the bums is adding more temporary shelter beds for the homeless and raising taxes. She said we need to find a source of revenue. Whether that's putting something on the ballot to raise business taxes. That's smart, Ronan. Drive more businesses out of the city, you idiot. Or taking a look at our general fund and reallocating money towards that purpose and taking it away from something else in the city. Typical answer from a do-nothing, know-nothing liberal. San Francisco has a director of public works. His name is Mohammed Nuru. His job is to clean the streets. He says, yes, we can clean, and then go back a few hours later, and it looks as if it was never clean. So is that how you want to spend your money? The 2016-2017 budget for San Francisco Public Works included $60 million for street environmental services. Did you hear that? What do you mean street environmental services? What does that mean? Due to the severity of the contamination in San Francisco, this department has inherited the problem of washing sidewalks. Mr. Nuru estimates that half of his street cleaning budget, $30 million, goes towards cleaning up feces and needles from homeless encampments and sidewalks. Now, I'm going to pause right there because I have talked about this for years. I've shamed the local news business. I've said, what do they do with their $1 million trucks? They cover nothing. All they cover is homophobia, anti-immigrant behavior, but they never cover what needs to be covered, which is the most strident example of the death of a civilization is how the streets are. When a society dies through its when streets start to die, let me put it to you that way, the civilization goes with it. It starts with the streets. There was a time, by the way, in America when there were vagrancy laws. You remember those ancient days? Vagrancy laws. You ever hear of them? What is a vagrant? It was here until the 70s. Then the hippie lawyers took over. At common law, the term vagrant referred to a person who was idle, refused to work, although capable of doing so, and lived on the charity of others. Until the 1970s, that's when America began to die, by the way. Until the 1970s, state vagrancy statutes were used by police to charge persons who were suspected of criminal activity, but whose actions had not gone far enough to constitute a criminal attempt. Court decisions, however, have struck down vagrancy laws as unconstitutionally vague. In addition, the term vagrant has been replaced by homeless person as a way of describing a person who is without means or a permanent home. Now, traditionally, communities knew how to treat vagrants. They treated them with suspicion. They considered them beggars or people likely to commit crimes. In England, vagrants were whipped, branded, conscripted into military service, or exiled to penal colonies. In colonial America, vagrancy statutes were common. A person who wandered into a town and did not find work was told to leave the community or face criminal prosecution. I can read more on this, but I will tell you that the liberals have destroyed our cities, and I'm going to broaden this now to your city, your town. All across America, people are complaining about the breakdown of civilization, the breakdown of order. San Francisco is the epitome of the breakdown of civilization and order. Oh, I know they hold themselves up as so cool, so much better than everyone else. Why, we have the finest of restaurants down here in San Francisco. We have a good old Opry. Oh, yes, we have an opera out here that can compete with any of them big ones back east. We have an opera here, and all ladies come out in dresses that they get from some of the finest couture shops from back east, which they return the next day because most of them don't have a dime. They live in hovels, making believe they live on Pacific Heights with rented earrings. But they go to the Opry, they go to the symphony, the ballet, and they step over the needles and the feces and don't see it because they come from a fine culture. Governor Brown does nothing. Nancy Pelosi does nothing. Dianne Feinstein does nothing. And could you imagine Feinstein is running for office again with feces in the street, with needles in the street? Can you imagine Pelosi has not been thrown out despite the fact that this is in her jurisdiction? Oh, I know they're national figures, and this doesn't really fall under their purloin. Well, tell me whose purloin it falls under. No one's. And that's why there's such a human tragedy in San Francisco. Human waste, needles, garbage. I was in San Francisco yesterday. I got to tell you, again, I ran out of the city. And I must tell you, I have friends who own restaurants. They're not going to like to hear this. I'm afraid to eat in San Francisco. I hope they don't get mad at me. I'm afraid to eat in San Francisco. It's that dirty. But what about New York? What about Dallas? What about all the other cities that this show is heard in? Is it just as bad, or is it only San Francisco? I'd like to hear some of your bum horror stories. Things that you have had done to you or friends done to them by the so-called homeless population who are so far from innocent it's not funny. And I will talk about that as well as all the other news of the day. There's plenty of other news of the day, and believe me, I'm not short of news of the day. But when I saw this, I know the Florida shooter obtained 10 rifles in a year before the massacre, and I know he shouldn't have been able to. And I really don't care what you think of me or what you say about me. There must be some moderate gun control. Yes, I'm conservative. Yes, I passed the litmus test. Yes, I'm not one of the phonies who wrap himself in the flag and the Constitution and says, you can't take my guns away. I need my guns. Why do you need your guns? I think every home should have a Panzerfaust. I think that if you need an AR-15, perhaps you need an anti-tank gun. Not a big one. Not a modern one, but something along the lines of that given out by Hitler to the old men and the children in the streets of Berlin to knock out Allied and Russian tanks in the last days of World War II. They were all given a Panzerfaust. Wasn't that a home defense weapon? They were called a home guard. So for those of you who think you need an AR-15, why stop there? Why not a Panzerfaust? After all, if you're thinking you're going to hold off an army with your AR-15, why shouldn't you have a Panzerfaust? There should be a Panzerfaust in every home. And that's for those talk show hosts who are offended by the children who survived the school massacre recently, that they have the nerve to go to the state capitol in Tallahassee and lobby against certain weaponry. They have no right to do that. It's only talk show hosts who have the right to say anything about guns. Isn't that true? Isn't it the legion of talk show hosts who are the only people who should have rights to talk about weapons? Certainly not the children who face the barrel of a gun. We should only listen to those who face the barrel of a microphone. I'll be back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Old child, young child, feel all right.
Yeah, on a warm San Francisco night, you need to get night vision goggles to make sure you don't get a needle stick in your foot or step in human waste. So we have a major social problem here that's a human tragedy for all of us, especially those of us who pay taxes. And I will tell you right now, we have it upside down. It's all upside down. Additional beds for the homeless is the wrong approach. That is nonsense. It's another waste of money. It's just more graft and corruption for those who get the contracts to build the homeless beds, service the homeless beds, service the homeless. No, sir, that's not the solution. The solution is forcible removal of bums, across America to special places built for them 100 miles or so outside of city centers against their will, and give them the care that they need in facilities that are made just for them, and give them rehabilitation. And if they can't be rehabilitated, reopen the mental hospitals and put those who can't be rehabilitated into the mental hospitals where they can get the care that they need. But the idea that the street should be an outpatient ward is something that only Jerry Brown would tolerate. Now, look, this is not a joking matter. This has now reached a point where even the average news reporter in San Francisco has paid attention to a problem I've been pointing out for years, because I'm one of the few people in the media who actually walks the streets without bodyguards. I walk without cameras. I walk because I love to walk. And I will tell you, it's gotten so ugly and so bad in the last few years. You know, I look up at the towers going up, and I'm amazed at the beauty of the city. You see towers going up that are astonishingly beautiful. And then you look down at the street, and you see bums, feces, needles, urine. I don't have to keep repeating the words, do I? And when is it going to change? When you have politicians like Pelosi, who doesn't know what she's talking about, who lives in the city, Feinstein wants to run again, doesn't walk in the streets, doesn't see the streets, doesn't care about the streets, doesn't know the city is dying. What is it going to take for these octogenarian women to understand that they're out of touch with reality on every level? You think people want to hear about Trump every day from Feinstein and Pelosi? Do you think everybody wants to hear every day about Trump kissed a woman 10 years ago in an elevator? That's all they care about when the society is melting down? That's how crazy they become. They think that's all you care about. Is another idiot. He kissed me 10 years ago in an elevator. Now she's running for office somewhere. She ought to thank God he kissed her 10 years ago. It looks like the last time she got kissed was by Trump in an elevator 10 years ago. That's if he even kissed her. He says he didn't. But that's how sick the society has become. He kissed me 10 years ago, and now I'm running for office in an out-of-town venue. It's unbelievable to me. So tell me about your homeless bum horror stories and the filth in your city, would you please?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE.
Watching the tide roll.
Sitting on the dock by the bay. Okay, let's not go there. I think the first word has to be revised to this song. Goes to what Trump was talking about with certain third world countries. But you know, you don't have to go to third world countries anymore. If you really want to visit a diseased environment, just come to San Francisco and have a meal. Go home with hepatitis A, hepatitis B, maybe a little TB thrown in. Soon you're going to have leprosy in the streets, and I'll tell you it's a lifestyle choice for the bum to have leprosy. No, if you find a bum with leprosy and you want to treat it, and he says, I don't want to be treated, I like the way my skin looks, I'm sure that the liberal attorneys at the ACLU will say he has a right to have leprosy and wear it in the streets because it's his lifestyle choice. It's part of his culture. He likes leprosy. I could do reducto ad absurdum. I can do anything you'd like. But this is no longer a joke. The issue of vagrancy is the issue of the day. And this vagrancy of the cities is an example of the meltdown of our civilization. Right until the 1970s, when the drug addicts took over the country, there were state vagrancy statutes that police could arbitrarily use to get bums off the street. And that was struck down by the hippie lawyers. The same hippie lawyers who put pornography in your child's lunchbox with the famous case of the Penthouse vermin, who was, I forget his name, the one shot in the groin. I don't remember his name. Larry Flint, I believe. It was because of the Larry Flint case argued by a hippie lawyer before the Supreme Court, where he said, vile XXX pornography in your child's mind is a First Amendment protected freedom, which of course it isn't. It was never intended to be so. But they had expanded the First Amendment to mean anything they wanted it to mean, so it meant they could put pornography in your child's lunchbox and pollute your child's mind and destroy your child. And the same time in American history, which was the high drug use of the 60s and 70s, the same time is when the bums were allowed to proliferate in this country. You've got people living in cities like New York and San Francisco in $10, $20 million houses, townhouses. A bum can crap in their doorway, and they can't do anything about it. They could buy a $20 million townhouse in Manhattan, and a bum can encamp on the doorstep of their house and defecate on the doorstep. And if they try to remove him and get in an altercation with the bum has more rights than the homeowner. Now, you tell me that that's a sane society. I not only disagree with you, I'll tell you we have to do something about it quickly before typhus spreads, the plague spreads. And it will. I'm trained in these fields, and I'm telling you, when you have an outbreak of rodents, an outbreak of humans who will crap in the street, pee in the street, throw hypodermic needles in the street, and then you have these do-gooder liberals who say, oh, yeah, let's give them clean needles to use to be bigger drug addicts. That was never the solution. That was a psychotic solution. The argument was if we didn't give them clean needles, they would share needles and there would be more disease. Remember how reasonable they made it sound? How'd that work out for drug addiction? Made it worse, didn't it? No, the answer was to make the penalties for using drugs higher. That was the answer. But, of course, as you know, the credo of the left is anything goes. And as a result, the society is dying across America. KSFO, Cindy, tell us what happened to you or your friend. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Dr. Savage.
Yes, Wes on KSFO. Make it quick. Go ahead.
Hey, so I want to corroborate what you've seen. I've seen the same thing. I live here in the Bay Area, and driving down High Street in Oakland, I've seen homeless people just drop trowel and take a dump right there on the sidewalk at 7:30 in the morning. I've seen.
Yes, but isn't that a lifestyle choice in the East Bay? Aren't they permitted to do it out of a desire to be free and express themselves in any way possible? You don't want to inhibit their expression, do you? When you think about it, Wes, from a liberal point of view, they're too poor to buy paints, and so they can't paint on the street. They can't use chalk on the street, so they use whatever is at hand. And when you think about it, it's actually a very efficient use of a human body waste. To kind of mark the streets with their feces is an art form to the liberal. You're not looking at it properly. KSFO, Cindy, line 5, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi, Michael. My friend was walking along the waterfront, stepped on a dirty needle, went up in her heel. By the time she got home, it was infected. She lost part of her foot, spent a year and a half getting medical treatment, all from a dirty needle, a cocktail of drugs. That's lovely San Francisco.
Well, that's what I guess she was stepping out for the evening, and she had an untoward experience.
Yeah, bless her heart. It was horrible. Absolutely.
Cindy, where do you live in the area?
I live in Vacaville.
And what, you came into town for a nice dinner?
Come into town, no, just for a nice afternoon, just for a walk along the waterfront, a day in the city.
Well, you could look at it this way. At least she didn't end up like Kate Steinle, shot by an illegal alien who was welcomed to the city by Feinstein and Pelosi. You could look at it in a way like she only lost a foot. She didn't lose her life. From Pelosi's point of view, that's a step up.
Exactly.
Thanks for the call. You want sarcasm? I'll give you sarcasm. But what about other cities? I want to hear about New York. I want to hear about Dallas. I want to hear about Jacksonville. I want to hear about Richmond. I want to hear all the cities across America where this show is heard so that people don't think it's only San Francisco, that has melted down as a result of liberalism, the mental disorder. Let's go to New York City. Tim, WABC, line 7. Go ahead, fire away.
Okay, hi, Dr. Savage. Thanks very much. Yeah, on the subway, this homeless guy gets in. Of course, it used to be, like you said, it used to be called vagrants. He gets in, and with his cart, and he opens up his newspaper, puts it down on the floor, drops his trousers, and takes this massive dump. Everybody's going to the other end of the car, subway car, takes his dump. Horrible. Everybody's in disarray, and he packs it all back up.
Oh, please, wait, let's stop there. My lunch is on the way. Stop it. Stop. And it's from a Chinese restaurant, no less. There's only so much I can listen to. Tim, don't you think it's the bum's lifestyle choice to defecate in front of people? Isn't he expressing himself? I mean, if nudity is allowed in New York, anywhere that you go. Why shouldn't relieving yourself be allowed? Isn't that what Bill de Blasio wants?
Yeah, it's amazing. Hey, Giuliani did this thing, workfare, clean up the city. You want your check, clean the streets, you get your work.
That's right. He started with the squeegee men, God bless him. That cleaned the city all the way up to the top. And now we're back to where we started from under Dinkins. It's even worse. The city's worse than it was under Dinkins right now. And it's not going to be solved until enough people speak out. And we're speaking out today. Now, the other day, the great Clarence Thomas talked about victimhood and how society is becoming fatigued with everyone playing a victim. This ties right into what we're talking about, Clint. Can you please play soundbite number 4 for the audience? Thank you.
I was with a young woman who happened to be black in Kansas recently, and she said something really interesting. She said, I'm really tired of having to play the role of being black. I just want to go to school. And I think at some point we're going to be fatigued with everybody being a victim.
That's right. Now you know why he's hated by Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapperhead, because he says it like it is. We could also talk about, we're talking about this topic. It's a very big one across America, disease streets, feces, needles. It's not a joke. It's not limited to San Francisco. WNTW, Virginia, line 1. Tell us about your city, please.
Mike, I haven't seen any humans do that, but I've seen some grown adults. They go down to alleys. These alleys are big alleys that people put the garbage cans behind, so at least there's a big garbage can he can partially hide himself, relieving himself. But there's a drug chain here. I'm not going to mention their name. The filth around that drugstore is something else. As a matter of fact, today I called the district representative and says, you know, you're judged by appearances. I cannot believe that the manager of this store is letting all this crap be out there alongside his building. Empty bottles, empty drink containers, empty food cartons, and you see these people sometimes, they'll drink something, you just throw it out in the street. But I've come to the conclusion, Mike, that as the nation becomes more immoral, it becomes more physically dirty.
That's right. That is exactly right. What we are seeing in the streets of America, that's a brilliant observation, is what we're seeing inside the human landscape of the soul, the spirit, the garbage, the filth, the drugs, the sexual license, the rampant use of drugs. It's all related to the bums in the streets defecating and such. That's a brilliant observation. Now, you know, you could say, well, it's too late. We can't fix it. I don't know. Is it too late? What if we got a law and order candidate in every city of the country who cleaned it up and said, we're reinstating vagrancy laws. And you don't like it, you say it's unconstitutional, you can shove it, Marvin, from the ACLU. And what if we got a guy who cracked down and said enough is enough in San Francisco? I'll tell you what we're doing. We are taking them off the streets against their will. We are building them camps 100 miles out of San Francisco in cheap areas. We're going to give them the care that they need. They're going to get cleaned up, or we're moving them into mental hospitals. Those who were violent will go to prisons, special for the homeless prisons, if you're vagrant prisons. And those who can work are going to work. They're going to work for the Department of Public Works, cleaning the streets 8 hours a day to get any kind of public assistance. They're going to get a broom, and they're going to get a hose, and they'll clean the streets. They'll have income. And then we'll bus them back to the facilities that we build for them. What if we had a politician who said enough is enough? We're going to start by cleaning up the cities of the vagrants. You're telling me it wouldn't have a healing effect upon society as a whole? I would argue to the contrary. Just as Giuliani's crackdown on the squeegee men cleaned up crimes all the way up the chain, so will cleaning up the bums on the streets clean up the cities from the top to the bottom, at least in my opinion. And I'll tell you, it's getting to me, and I'm a man who loves cities. I love the city very much. I'm basically a city person. I'm an urban person. And the odd part is that I had my day off yesterday, and I needed a break from the tension of the news and the shooting, the children killing. The killing of the children got me very sick. I've been in a tailspin since the killing at the school. To me, it's not a intellectual discussion about gun control and no gun control, and to show how tough I am by saying nothing should be done with guns. Don't you dare touch our guns. It's not that issue for me. It's actually It was eating me alive. The dead children, I couldn't get them out of my mind. I couldn't get out of my mind what the FBI had done on Friday by releasing that fake, indictments against the 16 Russians to cover up their own failure, and I wrote an article on it. But I really couldn't rest all weekend. I was just broken up inside over it. That after the children are dead, right away it becomes a political football, both left and right. It got me sick. And I needed that day off yesterday. So take a guess what I would do on my day off. I didn't go golfing because I don't golf. I didn't play tennis because I don't play tennis. I didn't go hiking in the mountains because I really don't like hiking in the mountains. I like urban hiking. So I went into San Francisco where I have an apartment right in this area that we're talking about. And I walked for over an hour. I walked all the way up California Street, all the way up the top of the hill to the Fairmont Hotel. And then I walked down the hill on Powell Street into North Beach. And then I walked around and I observed again. And at the end of the day, I was so exhausted from what I had seen, the city being degenerated like this. The only good news was the Chinatown area, which surprisingly enough is policed much better by the Chinese people, who will not tolerate the bums doing that in front of their stores. And they're getting ready to celebrate the Chinese New Year. The only good part of the day was the fireworks and the smell of the gunpowder, which was quite cleansing. I was so exhausted from it, I chose not to stay in San Francisco for dinner. I didn't even want to eat in that city anymore. And when this economy starts to falter, when there's a downturn, and people stop coming to this city to have dinner because of the bums and the filth and the needles and the etc., then maybe we'll elect someone who will clean the streets up. But I don't think that's going to happen too soon, do you? No, sirree, Bob. Let's take a quick transition and back in a minute on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Look, welcome back to the Savage Nation. Before we return to regular program, I want to tell you about nitric oxide. What? I've never heard of it. Nitric oxide is one of the most important molecules in your body. It promotes healthy circulation, and that gets the oxygen and nutrients flowing throughout your body, helps support healthy blood pressure, and you can help your body produce nitric oxide naturally by drinking Super Beets. Only Super Beets is made from beets, grown to very exact standards. The nutrients are concentrated in a special way which makes them usable to the body to create nitric oxide very safely and naturally. So if you want to increase your body's nitric oxide levels, just call 800-481-0504, 800-481-0504, or go to SavageLovesBeats.com. First order, you know what you're going to get? Another 30-day supply of Super Beets for free, indicator strips to show you how they're working in your body, and free shipping. So I want you to call 800-481-0504 or go to SavageLovesBeats.com today. Bill on WABC, tell us your bum horror story, because we're all appalled at America's streets today.
Hey, Dr. Savage. My wife and I owned a home in the Castro for 8 years, a fixer-upper. It was Edwardian, beautiful. It had a nice archway. My wife was leaving for work one morning, and at the bottom of the steps, there's a man dressed as a woman performing a sex act on another man. That archway, we usually find people sleeping there. We'd find fecal matter. We'd find hypodermic needles. We ended up spending $2,500 to put a wrought iron gate there. The money wasn't the issue. It's just that we kind of...
Yeah, but you see, you're locking yourself out from the cultural experience of Nancy Pelosi's backyard.
Yeah.
I think that if you and your wife got over your transphobia and embraced the cultural diversity of Pelosi's backyard and enjoyed the human performance of a transsexual performing sex act in your doorway, it would lighten you up, it would open you up, and you wouldn't be an uptight right-wing conservative.
Hail Marys, you're absolutely right.
Bingo.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt.
Thank you for listening to the show at the Savage Nation.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
February 19th, 2018.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Talking about this and that, whatever's in the news, whatever's on my mind, whatever view and review I want to do. And one of the things we're all talking about is the shockingly amateurish portrait of the former president and the first lady, something below that of a junior high school illustrator. It's a shocker to me because they're a good, let's say you want to keep it in a certain way and you want to give it to an African-American artist. What about Simi Knox? He's at least a qualified artist. Look up Simi Lee Knox paintings. He did one of Bill Clinton. That's a fairly good caricature. I would say it's a reasonable reproduction of the man that you wouldn't be ashamed of. Why did they have to hire a woman who's probably done posters for a catalog at a university? Something to do with, throwing over America. There are African-American artists who are really good. Well, what did they pick her for? Why? I spent the whole weekend buying art online. I bought 19th century paintings. You want to see what art is? I'll put one of them up on my website. I'll show you what an artist does. Don't give me any idea this is art. This is not art. This is garbage. Don't get me mad now. I don't want to get angry right now. A Hallmark card has better art on it than this. So, I've said enough. I don't want to go anymore. It's a disaster. It's a nightmare. People gasp when they pull the curtain off it. And it shows you again how naive Barack Obama and Michelle are, that they would even hire someone to do such crap and think that everybody would worship them. They don't even know the difference between one piece of real art and this. Let's call it an illustration. It's an illustration. It's not art. Difference between illustrators and artists. You understand that? And again, I invite you to look at the picture of Barack Obama. It looks like he's relieving himself in a forest. I don't understand how a president would let an artist pose him on a chair in a bed of poison ivy. I don't get this one. He looks like he's sitting on a chair in the woods to relieve himself. I'm sorry. The king has no clothes to me. I consider myself a connoisseur of paintings. Yeah, how do you like that? I actually grew up in the art business since I'm a little boy. My father first taught me the difference between one artist and another. He said many artists are pretty good, but when you look at the fingers and the toes, you can see the difference between really fine artists and all the others. I don't think Barack Obama's fingers and toes are very accurate. Now it gets even worse. I mean, when you see a man who was running the world and had his finger on the button, who talks about this childish portrait of himself and his wife in a way that he speaks about it, I don't care who you are, even if you voted for him, does it not give you pause for thought as to the man's actual intellect as opposed to the fake intellect that you were told he had? Listen to what he says about the First Lady in 2003.
Amy, I want to thank you for so spectacularly capturing the grace and beauty and intelligence and charm and hotness of the woman that I love.
Do you believe a word of what this man just said? I mean, you could say anything you want about Michelle Obama. Hot she isn't. Sorry. I live with those words. Hotness is not a description of her in any way, shape, or form. But what president talks about his wife in that manner except a dummy? Now, I'm going to show you the dummy. This is how the Associated Press covered budgets. February 2nd, 2015. Listen to their headline. Obama sends $4 trillion spending plan to Congress, pledging help for middle class. February 9th, 2016. Breaking. Obama sends record $4.1 trillion spending plan to Congress to combat terror threats, global warming. Year later, 2 years later, February 12, 2018, breaking news. President Trump sends Congress $4.4 trillion spending plan that features soaring deficits. The Associated Press is a Soviet outfit that should be broken up under a RICO statute. Do you see the propaganda value here? Do you understand how propaganda works? I'm in the business of deciphering propaganda for you. If there's anything I do, it's I break propaganda down. So that's why I'm talking about this. Trump approval nears 50%. That's shocking, isn't it? It's great. It's great news. Rasmussen reports shows that 49% of people approve of Trump, 50% disapprove. Still split down the middle. But much better than you would have thought. He's winning. I'm going to predict that he's going to survive the whole Mueller thing, and then I'm going to get off this. He's going to survive it, come out stronger than ever, and he may go down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time. Maybe. Could happen. And when that happens, what are you going to do then? You're going to be on the wrong side of history. Why do you hate him so much? What has he actually done that you hate him for? I can't figure it out. I knew why I strongly disliked Obama, and I gave you the reasons for it in 3 books in a row. It wasn't just like hot air coming out of me. You know, even the ACLU at the end of Obama's regime said that he created the greatest surveillance state in the history of the world, greatly exceeding that of the Stasi of Eastern Europe. And that shouldn't go over your head. I'll tell you, one of the things I don't like about this administration is the budget, the blown-out budget. This is frightening. Spending like insanity. The pork barrel spending is getting worse. Don't call on any of this, please. I'll just get it out of my system like I'm like lancing a boil, a politics boil that popped up in my head. And I'm running like a needle through it to get it out. 50% favor tariffs on goods from countries that pay very low wages. Okay, and who's going to call on a thing like that? Hashtag MeToo movement lawmaker investigated for sexual misconduct allegations from male staffers. I was waiting for this day. I was waiting for this one. What a story this is. California Assemblywoman Cristina Garcia, whose high-profile advocacy of the hashtag MeToo movement earned her national media notice, is herself the subject of a state legislative investigation in the wake of a report that she sexually harassed and groped a former legislative staffer. Oh, my God. 20 minutes. Groped by Garcia, blah, blah, blah. Cornered him alone in the annual softball game as he attempted to clean up the dugout. Garcia appeared inebriated, stroked his back, then squeezed his buttocks and attempted to touch his crotch before he extricated himself and quickly left. I'd like to see if this really yields like her being thrown out of office. Are you kidding me? The day I read that young males in Hollywood come out and say, I was harassed by a female executive, that's the day I'll believe any of this. I was laying awake. I was having a lot of trouble sleeping because I was realizing this is a battle for the survival of America that Trump is going through. Why are they attacking him so viciously? What has he actually done? Can you actually break it down about the maniacs in the streets, what they're screaming about? Okay, let's start with some of the issues. He is deporting illegal aliens. Okay. Who did he start with? MS-13. So you're telling me all of those college girls from Columbia want more tattooed gangsters in the streets of Long Island and New York? They want them selling heroin and drugs? Aha. Now you understand a little bit about who's behind some of these movements, don't you? I'll just let it hang in the air. I'll just let you figure out who's really behind all these things. Maybe you could put 2 and 2 together as to who is behind the anti-Trump activity. We know who they are to a certain extent. You think all these activities are spontaneous? You're mistaken. They are well-funded. They are well-organized. They're like an oiled machine. What has Trump actually done that's so evil? Tell me what he's done. He doesn't believe in the, quote, fake science of global warming. And tell me how that has changed one life thus far. It hasn't changed a life at all. And while you're thinking about that, I will refer you to the fact, for those of you who don't know science at all, I'll make it 5th grade level for you. Something that even those of you who went to the High School of Performing Art like Bill Maher could understand in between toking the joints in West Hollywood, if that's what he does. Are you ready, boys and girls on the left? All you global warmists. Robert D. Nobody. Robert D. Nolo. What an idiot he has become. I don't know how I ever liked his movies. The guy goes to the Middle East and puts America down and stabs us in the back. I will never even stop on a station that's running a movie of his. Every movie of Robert De Niro, he's either beating someone, shooting someone, stabbing someone, or punching someone. And then when he's off the air, he's against guns, against knives, and against violence. Mook, you're a bum, you're a mook, you're a bum, he's a bum, he's a mook, he's a bum, he's a book, he's a mook, he's a bum.
He's so blatantly stupid. He's a punk.
A punk.
He's a dog. He's a pig. He's a con. Artist.
Shut up.
A mutt.
Shut up. Go back to Mulberry Street. Go strut around on Mulberry Street, you schmuck. You're a nobody. You're everything you said about Trump. The only thing is you're jealous of him because he made it to the top and you didn't. You're doing failed comedies now. In order to bail yourself out, you and Marty Scorsese are doing another gangster movie. You went back to, again, poisoning the human mind. Again, putting out a movie, shooting, burning, stabbing, mugging, torturing, and then come out with your liberal crap. So these people hate Trump. But what has Trump actually done that provokes the hatred? He won the election. That's what he did. You see, they almost had it. Do you understand they almost had it? Do you understand that they had Merkel in Europe, the potato-faced oven stuffer, was running Europe? She owns Europe. She runs Europe. They're all afraid of the potato face. They almost had the corrupt Dixie Mafia running America under Hillary Clinton. Do you understand they almost had it knocked up, taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3? They almost had the world in their hands. And then they could have erased our borders permanently, etc. But they lost. So then they hired this goon Mueller, and they come up with a fake story about collusion with Russia, and they won't let it go. To me, as far as I'm concerned, it's time for Trump to fire Mueller, but that's a separate story. Get me started now on the real collusion going on in the world. It's time to end this investigation. It cannot be open-ended. It can't have an unlimited budget. He's found nothing. It's over. If there was anything there, he would have found it by now. So the thing is, they don't want to let go of the New World Order. It's that simple. Now, maybe you live on the Upper West Side of New York and you want a New World Order. I don't know. I'm a quaint kind of guy. I like the borders of America. In fact, I'd build a wall so high that a tank couldn't come through it. I have other ideas for stopping the opioid crisis in America. Unfortunately, they wouldn't be accepted by most audiences. Not at all. You're not ready for what really must be done to stop it. There is a show on Showtime called The Trade that I highly recommend. It's agitating. It's about the trade in heroin and fentanyl in the United States of America. The producers and directors are amazing. They cut back and forth between the poppy fields of Mexico, the gangs killing each other to control the poppy fields in Mexico, the smuggling routes, and then they show, let's say, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. And they show a girl, 22 years old, a drug addict who dies of an overdose, and her father crying over her grave, putting flowers, or another one in treatment, another junkie here, another junkie there. And it makes you really think very hard about a nation in crisis like ours with an opioid crisis. What must really be done can only be done in a dictatorship. But that's what must be done to stop it. Otherwise, this is never going to stop. Now, building a wall, think about it. What would a wall do to stem the flow of drugs into America? Probably a great amount of drugs would be stopped. If there was a wall between Mexico and the U.S., think about what would happen to the drug trade. It would be not stopped in its tracks. There's always a way to get drugs through. But it would certainly be slowed down to a great extent. So who is it who's screaming the loudest about keeping us from building that wall? I don't know. Look them up. See why they want no wall. See why they want open borders. Now, this all started under George Bush, by the way, not so strangely enough. You remember when George Bush approved NAFTA? You remember when George Bush wanted the 6 superhighways coming in from Mexico? We're all scratching our heads. Why would he want that? I don't know. I have no idea why George Bush wanted so badly those superhighways from south of the border. Only he could answer that question. I know he hates Trump. That I know for sure. So there's an awful lot here that doesn't meet the eye that you should look at.
I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. February 19th, 2018.
There's a lot of other things worth talking about that I will get to, such as, should the Corporation for Public Broadcasting have their entire budget cut? They're complaining, you see, that the president has proposed cutting the CPR budget from their $400 and some odd million a year to all but $15 million for each fiscal year, which is a good start. I have no idea why the American people should fund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It's a holdover from the Soviet era. Have you ever heard anything on the Corporation for Public Broadcasting that's of any value? And if you like it so much, it should be funded by private individuals or by Mark Zuckerberg, who has money to blow. Just blow it on them. Give it to him. What do we have to pay for this anti-American propaganda for? And as I said to you, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which I think is the umbrella group for National Public Radio, competes with me, and they're in an unfair situation. Very unfair, because they have no advertisers. They don't need advertisers. They steal your tax money instead. Have you seen the salary that these talentless hacks get on NPR? Have you actually seen what they pay themselves? If you saw it, you'd gag. But what you don't understand is ratings in radio are based upon the time that people spend listening. Now, the fact of the matter is, we live off advertising in this medium, and the blocks are long. We all know that. 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Many people don't understand that without it, we wouldn't be on the air at all, so thank God we have it. But what happens is, when you run a show without ads, people listen for the whole hour or longer. So it's an unfair ratings situation. NPR gets very high ratings because they have no ads. If they were to compete in the marketplace as I do, their ratings wouldn't be as high. So I say cut them to the bone, cut their salaries, and let them go get a job in the real world. You know, it's sickening, and Trump is right to cut their budget down to the bone. And I guarantee you Congress will not go along with Trump, and they will restore every dime to NPR and then some. It's sickening. It's a crime. Oh, I don't want to. I've been trying to avoid what I'm about to say, but all right, I knew it would come out. So here it comes. Let me back it up a bit. We have a war going on in America between world government, socialism, if you want to put it that way, in a simplistic baby way, one world government, and nations that still respect and want the integrity and sovereignty of their national identity, namely their borders, language, and culture. That's what this nation was built upon. That is what Trump ran upon, is what I have talked about for all these 24 years in radio. It's what Brexit is about. It's what's going on in Europe. And then you have evil forces like those funded by George Soros, who is an international, in my opinion, terrorist, because he's interfered with the elections in many nations. He is doing here's the funny part. They're claiming that in this country, the left is screaming that Russia colluded with Trump. And so over a year of it, nothing came up. We know it's a big lie. One big lie after another. But for the fact of the matter, we know that George Soros colluded to overthrow legitimate governments all around Europe, including Israel, by the way. He colluded, he financed, in every evil manner. This one single man is now trying to overthrow Brexit. Now, why would a maniac, a madman like George Soros, the money trader, want one world government? It's a government run probably out of Brussels, where America has almost no say in its own national identity or national politics.
Savage.
Well, we're back on the Savage Nation. So let's look at the news for a minute. That's all you want to hear about. You're obsessed with it. Eventually, I'm going to read you a list of the criminal aliens set free by sanctuary cities and what they did after they were released by the vermin called police chiefs, sheriff's chiefs, attorney generals of corrupt states that are in cahoots with the illegal aliens. You know, there's two Americas right now. There's the America that knows that the illegal aliens are killing us. Then there's the America that is owned lock, stock, and barrel by God knows who owns them. The police, for example, in Sonoma County, California, arrested a guy named Estrada Margos, a citizen of Guatemala, in Santa Rosa, California, on charges of inflicting corporal injury to a spouse or co-inhabitant. The vermin who run the city of Santa Rosa's police department forced the police, the sheriffs maybe, to release this piece of crap. And they released him in defiance of federal immigration authorities. A few weeks later, he was arrested as a suspect in the murder of his girlfriend, Veronica Cabrera Ramirez. He is currently in Sonoma County Sheriff's custody. The police chief who forced his release should be arrested as a co-conspirator. And I predict that the day is going to come very soon in this country when all these wise politicians who think that they're above the law, who think they're protected, who think that Jerry Brown and the Attorney General of California are going to stand behind them, they're going to jail. They're going to be in the same jail as all of these illegal aliens who go out and kill and murder and do things like that. They're going to be put away. And then we'll have a nation of laws instead of a nation of lawlessness, as we have now under these psychotic liberals. So don't think I don't know what's going on and I can't talk about it. I can do it. But I don't want to get myself too upset. I'd rather go back to some of the other topics. There's another one here they want to indict Netanyahu. To me, Netanyahu's been in office too long. Was he been there 20 years? What kind of democracy, I know it's a parliamentary system, which really is a horror. Why don't they have term limits in these countries? Netanyahu is like a Yahoo. I mean, it's time already he moved on. So now in Israel, the cops are pushing an indictment of Netanyahu. Corruption, bribery, he's fighting back. It's all political. Israel needs a fresh face. Bibi, your time has passed. Bibi, I know you're loved by the American conservative movement, but move on, Bibi. It's time to move on. I'd like to see a Yemenite Israeli woman Air Force pilot, or let us say paratrooper, a female paratrooper from Iranian descent, as Prime Minister. Have you cut back on your Facebook time? Why? Why have newspapers died? Do you still read newspapers? Which ones why? Why does CNN continue to praise the madman of North Korea? Should Jeff Zucker of CNN be tried for sedition? Of course he should. Half the judges in this country should be arrested for what they're doing. I just saw a story that made me sick. Another one. This one got me emotional. You know what a graffiti artist is, don't you? They destroy buildings, they destroy trucks, they destroy subway cars, buses. In other words, they're vandals. A so-called judge in New York just awarded $7 million to a group of graffiti vandals because their garbage was taken off a building before the building was demolished. Now, listen to what I just said. The building was going to be demolished anyway, but because the owner took down the graffiti off the building, this Judge Block awarded these bums $7 million. You know a country can't survive its fools. You know a country can't survive its communists. You know its country cannot survive its traitors from within. You know its country cannot survive its witch hunts. You know all of this, right? Now let's look at the case of Robert D. Dumbo. You know him as De Niro. I've affectionately changed his name to Robert D. Dumbo because although he seems to be a very smart businessman, he has no concept whatsoever of the things that he speaks so passionately about, such as global warming. No background in science to even understand the first thing about it. So he goes to Dubai. He's invited by the Arabs of Dubai to give a speech, and during the speech he stabs the United States in the back. We have tried to find the sound, but it's been censored and removed. He called America a backward country suffering from temporary insanity. He said, we don't like to say we're a backward country, so let's just say we're suffering from a case of temporary insanity. In other words, he did what he does best, which is express his jealousy of Donald Trump by attacking the United States of America. So he figured, well, let you hear it for yourself. The country denuded all of the Dumbo's speech. You can't get it. You telling me he's not engaging in censorship, him and his agent? Of course they are. They don't want you to actually know what this man is saying. That's a real story about the censorship that the Dumbo is apparently engaging in. It's that simple. There's another big story I want to talk about, which is this one. The Israel war. The Israelis lost an F-16, which means that Russia has provided Syria with the most advanced anti-aircraft equipment in the world, and the Israelis blew it in plain English. It's the first Israeli jet shot down, I think, since 1982. Don't underestimate what happened over there. Another big story is the media's sycophantic love for the North Korean fat man, Kim Jong mentally ill on. Why is it that the very same addicted Trump haters in the media who hate Trump for no matter what he does are so in love with Fat Boy. Why? How in the world can you not see through the insanity of an NBC that glorifies Kim Jong mentally ill and condemns Donald Trump no matter what he does? Can you not see, finally and for all, how sick this media is in this country and why you rightly hate them and distrust them and wish they were in prison? There's another great story that I don't want to miss. I caught it over the weekend. I put it up on, again, michaelsavage.com. Please go there and look at it before it's gone. Witch hunts should be left in the Middle Ages, says an Oscar-winning film director. Witch hunts should be left in the Middle Ages, says Oscar-winning film director, blasting the hashtag MeToo movement. What a brave man he is. If only Robert De Niro had the guts that he pretends to have in his movies and would say the same thing, right? Media bias showing during the Olympics. Trump's daughter-in-law hospitalized after suspicious substance mailed to her turned out to be cornstarch, which is what I get every time I eat Chinese food. And I was coughing just now, not because I'm sick at all. I have no known physical ailments. I'm coughing because I ordered extremely hot and spicy food, which I shouldn't have done. I was coughing like crazy from the spices. During cold and flu season, I eat extraordinarily spicy foods. I load up on vitamin A 100,000 units a day. Vitamin C to bowel tolerance, zinc, D1, you name it. Man, I don't want this flu. This is a bad one. And as I told you, there's more to this flu epidemic than meets the eye. There's something amiss with the whole story we're getting out of the CDC and the government. I don't believe a word of it. The number of deaths, do you know that 1 out of 10 deaths was from the flu and the associated illnesses related to the flu? That means of all, let's say out of every 10 deaths, 1 of them was a flu-related death. We're living through a very severe, virulent flu epidemic. My gut instinct tells me the vaccine is partly to blame. My gut instinct tells me that the crazy drug industry made some gigantic error in this vaccine, which is not only not ameliorating the effects of this strain of virus, it's actually stimulating the virus. I think it's weakening our immune system. There's something wrong with the whole picture. Why is it that this population of ours right now is so ill-equipped to battle the flu in an ordinary way? What's wrong here? Why are our bodies just not ready for this particular strain of flu virus? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? We hear it's an H1B3, I think. But where is it from? Where did it originate? Did it jump? Is it zoonotic? Did it jump out of the animal population? Was it imported by immigrants from Asia? That's why it was called Asian flu, by the way, years ago. Sorry, nothing racial about that. It's medical. Most influenza epidemics begin in Asia, incidentally. Something you probably don't want to know. You have to be very careful, and I've given you some cautionary tales, which you probably learned from your mother. Like, boys and girls, wash your hands thoroughly when you walk in your house. Number 2, take your shoes off at the door. I know, laugh if you want. Go ahead. Laugh if you want. When you walk out of a dirty street in your city or your town, why don't you do what the Japanese have done for ages, which is take your shoes off? You don't want to tramp viruses into your house through your shoes. And yes, viruses live for a long period of time, even in shoes. So those are simplistic things. Wash your hands, take your shoes off. You know about going to the supermarket and using those wipes on the carts, right? I mean, have you lost all common sense? Sneeze in the elbow of your arm, not out into the air, things of that nature. For those of you who hate Trump, and I'm not one of them, I actually love Trump, and I think Trump's going to go down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time, by the way, and you can put something else and take it to the bank. As time goes on, more and more people are seeing that the investigation is completely fraudulent. It's based upon nothing but politics. Robert Mueller is committing a crime by broadening the scope of his investigation and not wrapping up his little circus and taking it home. As time goes on, more and more people are turning against Mueller, turning against the fake Russia collusion thing, and Trump is becoming increasingly popular. And now it's primarily based upon the economy. Make no mistake about it. It's bread and butter issues. And once this infrastructure privatization takes hold, and more thousands and thousands of construction jobs are suddenly let out, the unions are going to lose their grip on the workers, and more people in the states that voted for Trump are going to vote for him again. He will be here, I guarantee you, for the whole 8 years. That's number one. But the fact of the matter is, the times they are changing, and they're not changing in favor of the so-called progressive screamers and the hysterics out there. The times are actually turning towards us, those of us on the right side of things. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
By now you've seen the presidential portrait of Barack Obama and the one of First Lady Michelle. To say they're out of the ordinary is the ultimate understatement. But to say that the artists who painted these portraits are radical leftists, who walk the same path as the Obamas when it comes to America, is not a stretch by any means. These portraits were painted as they were painted by and who they were purposely made to do, to stir up emotions and offend Americans. Now let's look at the artists who painted. The man who painted the president, Kehinde Wiley, well, what does he do? Well, one of his paintings is called Judith and Holofernes, is from Wiley's most recent body of work. And his first series of paintings is to feature female subjects. Sounds benign, right? It's a 2012 explanation of the, quote, work from the North Carolina Museum of Art Foundation. It reads, blah, blah, blah. But the painting shows a black woman decapitating the head of a white girl, holding the white girl's head in her hand. Obama knew this background of this radical artist, just like Reverend Wright. Remember, who said, "God damn America"? Obama sat there like a dummy for 30 years and then made believe he didn't, and you voted for him? Obama knew that this artist was just like Reverend Wright, who hated America and wanted to stir up race hatred. And he purposely picked this so-called artist because he knew it would inflame racial division, which is what he did for the years he was in office. Now let's look at the artist who painted Michelle's portrait, Amy Sherald. According to the Baltimore Sun, quote, Sherald's life-size portraits pull viewers in from across the room. Her subjects are African-American. That's interesting. What if a white painter only painted white people? I'm just thinking out loud. She has a right to do that. Some people paint ships, some people paint people. So she likes to paint only one particular race of people. Amy. All right, okay. Now, the painting, though, itself is nothing but a poster. It looks like a bad poster. But one of her works has the racially charged title, High Yellow Masterpiece. We ain't no cotton-picking Negroes. Okay. So, in other words, she's an adolescent academic hack, which the universities are filled with. But Michelle is supposed to be one of the smartest women on the earth. Does this painter reflect her thinking? The woman who once said she was proud of this nation for the first time when her husband was elected? Or that she lived in a house built by slaves when in fact Michelle Obama was born into a fairly wealthy middle-class family? So I say it's funny that this came up, these portraits of Dorian and Mrs. Gray. They're almost representative of who they are, two cartoon characters who were foisted upon us and the world without any backgrounds whatsoever that would qualify them to be the president and first lady. And then they had Jeff Zucker of CNN and the others turn them into what they are. And yet this artist, in a strange way, shows us who they are, which are cartoon characters. But look a little more into who the artist is who painted, and see if you can confirm or deny what I'm telling you. Known for hateful, racist art. Oh, yeah, look into that. Take a look at pictures of showing an African-American woman with a knife in one hand and a white girl's head in another. Oh, yeah. Now, what would happen if the Trumps selected an artist who, with your optic chiasma put on forward instead of backwards, had a picture of a white artist holding a black head in his hand with a knife? Where would the New York Times be then? As I said, I wanted to go out and buy some art. I haven't done so in a long time. I have a small collection. I grew up. So I bought, for example, a bronze group. It's fantastic, casting by Barbara Diane in France, 1890. I bought a bronze bust of Bianca by Cesar Constantino Serabelli, who lived between 1841 and 1918, with a polychrome cold-painted patina, signed verso, titled Bianca on the front of the integral front of it. My favorite piece was a Nicolas May from France, bronze sculpture of two men dueling, a masterpiece done in 1887. Or I did a beautiful execution from a De La Fontaine foundry in 1865. I did one of my favorite pictures that I bought was a picture. I don't even think it's on this little list. I'm not showing off. I'm telling you what I actually bought. A great picture called Monks and Soldiers. You can probably find it online. Unfortunately, I already bought it. Monks and Soldiers. The color, the depth, the detail is there. And then I wake up to this Drek, and I say to myself, my God, it's everything we were warned about Michelle and Barry that I knew to be true, which is that they were actually foisted upon us by powers that be, that we don't even understand who they are. And they faked it for 8 straight years. Can't they just shut up and cash in on their 8 years of deceit? Do you know that they got a $70 million book advance and they're still complaining about racism? I'm saying 7-0. $70 million as a book advance, and they're still claiming that there's racism in America, that there's Jim Crow, and this and built in a house. Why can't they just stop? Can't they just go away? Thank God we have term limits. For those of you who hate Trump, and I'm not one of them, I actually love Trump, as time goes on, more and more people are seeing that the investigation is completely fraudulent. It's based upon nothing but politics. Robert Mueller is committing a crime.
Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
It is the Savage Nation. Picture yourself in the middle of a cyclone, because you're in the middle of a hurricane or a cyclone, the Me Too hurricane, the Me Too cyclone, and many are getting swept into this cyclone, never to be seen again. Lives totally destroyed based on accusations. Accusations are enough to destroy a man's life right now. Now, Tarantino may survive because he has not been accused of sexual harassment. Let me repeat that 8 times. And while we're talking about this, what about the conservatives who are harassed and blacklisted by predatory liberal Hollywood dons and donnas? Anyone dare ask themselves that question? There's a harassment of conservatives in Hollywood. I know conservatives, very, very few. They have to hide who they are. And I know conservatives who are blacklisted in Hollywood. I'm one of them. What about the conservatives who are harassed and blacklisted by predatory liberal Hollywood dons and donnas? Can we sue and have a hashtag movement? But let's not worry about that right now. Let's go to the main issue of the day. There's a Quentin Tarantino defending Roman Polanski tape from 2003 on the Howard Stern show that I want to play because it was on the CBS News. It's become a big story, and it's worth talking about. 01, please.
I don't consider him a rapist.
Right, that's the one. How can you defend... See, I don't understand this. How come Hollywood embraces this madman, this director who raped a 13-year-old?
He didn't rape a 13-year-old. It was statutory rape.
Yeah,
all right.
Well,
that's not quite the same thing. All right?
Come on.
Enough said. It's not statutory rape. You know, he had sex with a minor. All right, that's not rape. To me, when you use the word rape, all right, you're talking about violent, throwing them down. It's like one of the most violent crimes in the world. You can't throw, throwing the word rape around is like throwing the word racist around. All right, it just doesn't apply to everything that people use it for. All right, he was guilty of having sex with a minor. All right,
that she didn't want to have.
No, that was not the case at all. She wanted to have it.
Well,
and dated the guy, and
she was 13,
and found out. Well, by the way, we're talking about America's morals. We're not talking about the morals in Europe and everything. All right.
Wait a second.
Morals in Europe, morals in China.
With a 13-year-old girl, and you're a grown man. You know that that's wrong because she has
giving her booze and
pills. I'm not. Look. she was down with it.
Oh, you're
crazy. And she's talked
Crazy.
about it. She's talked about it.
Oh,
now she's an adult.
So crazy.
I'm right. She's talked about it since. No, he didn't really do anything to me. Though it was a technicality of her being 13.
Wow. She wanted it. Well, even I'm speechless by this one. Of course, he's still functioning. I mean, still doing those old movies. Violence, sex, hatred, violence, sex, dismemberment. You ever look at the violence in the movies? I'd like to do a hashtag movement on no more guns, no more violence in movies. How about that one? I love all these liberals who are anti-Second Amendment, anti-gun, anti-American, anti-military, anti-police. Every movie is about dismemberment, stabbings. Don't you love it? Sean Penn, Mr. Liberal from Marin County, California. God knows where he is now. Old Sean Penn, Mr. Peace and Love. Every movie is either breaking someone's head open, stabbing them, shooting them. Quentin Tarantino, every movie is a violent movie. Well, it's a free country. We don't want censorship, do we? No. No, we don't want censorship. We want no such thing. All you do is attack Donald Trump on a daily basis, too, while you're producing violent dreck like that. So the Tarantino hurricane now, the Me Too hurricane. Let's now go to the Polanski victim, Samantha Gaimier, who actually was on CBS. The girl who was 13 years old, actually, the woman who had been 13 years old when Polanski allegedly did this to her. Let's hear what she has to say this morning on the Savage Nation right now.
People have been saying what he said and worse since I was 13. So I've always had to deal with it. I think Me Too is a good thing where we could have solidarity for each other. The shoe's a bit on the other foot now where I'm shown sympathy and Roman's the monster.
Now they have solidarity. Women have solidarity. When did that happen? Solidarity now? What, in their joining together to hate men? See, these cases are all individual. And we're living through a very dangerous time. I mean, I can ask you a loaded question. How do you feel about living in America during a witch hunt? Who is behind who lives and who dies? Do you think what's happening to Steve Wynn because of accusations without trial is fair? Do you know that it's gotten so bad that Steve Wynn, who gave $25 million to the University of Iowa, $25 million to the School to Support Blindness Research, is having his name taken off from the Eye Institute that he gave $25 million to. Can you believe this? Can you believe how insane this is? The university named the institute the Stephen A. Wynn Institute for Vision Research in 2013, following Wynn's $25 million donation to the school to support blindness research. Wynn, 76, was diagnosed in his 20s with retinitis pigmentosa, which has slowly compromised his vision, causing nighttime blindness and a lack of peripheral vision. So now the University of Iowa throws his name off an ophthalmological institute that he paid $25 million to support. Listen to the statement from the university president, Bruce Harold. Quote, "The University of Iowa is committed to ending sexual violence and sexual misconduct and ensuring survivors know they are believed, supported, and assisted. It is incongruous with the university's values to maintain the Wynn name in our program and building." Listen, you big-mouth fraud, you, Bruce Harold. You phony, you. Then give Wynn back. You're returning the money. You lying faker, you. You want his name off the building? Send him the money back. I have my sources. You didn't read this anywhere. You didn't hear it anywhere. You heard it here. Wynn, who has hotels and casinos that bear his name around the world, had few ties to Iowa prior to his donation. He said in 2013 that the donation for blindness research wasn't made to help himself, but to help make for a dearth of federal money for research. That's astounding. So these toads in the universities, these useless businessmen with academic titles who don't have the brains to run a real business, these academic businessmen take the money and then they run and take the name off the building. Wow. What a world we're living in. We know about the algorithm of the stock market, and no individuals could have manipulated that up and down that we just saw. They say it was technological. I don't believe it for a minute. And the only way we'll ever find out who manipulated the stock market is to find out who shorted the stock market, because billions of dollars were made and lost. You don't know that. It's up. You think it's up, so everyone's better again? Some people lost their shirts. Some people made billions of dollars, hundreds of millions. So this was a manipulation, and it means it could happen again tomorrow. Just remember that. Don't sit back and, things are good again. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the topics of the day, including, so many things. I did so many things in the first hour, and I can't recall. I could recall all of them if I had to. But the one thing that's very exciting to me, and if it's exciting to me, it may be of interest to you, which is the publication on Kindle of my little science fiction book called Xenon, Xenon. And I rushed it. I've been holding it for years. I've got to tell you right now, I wrote this in 82, 83, 84, 85. I remember the day I started to write it. I remember the day I conceived it. I was in a mall, in a community, a white community, a suburban white community north of San Francisco, in an outdoor mall, and I was looking at the people who looked like robots to me. The women who were shopping just looked robotic, which they are. They looked like Stepford wives with shopping bags, no soul, glazed over eyes, licking ice cream cones, drinking coffee. And I saw a future world of mindless, soulless people going to malls and buying in stores that repeated each other, iterations of the same store. 15 makeup stores that sell the same garbage, that kind of thing. Over and over again, the same thing. So I envision the future world that might happen, and it's a dystopian or anti-utopian world, as I saw it, run by militant feminists who castrate males. Remember, it's science fiction, okay? Don't get excited. Assign them life mates who are transsexual, and they keep the unclipped natural women for the state security forces, the SSF, to assist the women in charge, WIC. State mind-bogglers, SMs, delete memories and secretly use state gas stores at the noble gases to remolecularize their minds. In other words, the feminists who are running the world secretly inhale argon, freon, helium, krypton, neon. In the new world, there are no natural free people. This science fiction adventure is considered a masterpiece of wit and dark humor that accurately predicted the direction of the femme-dominated Stalinist states emerging in former Western democracies. Envisioned and written in the early 1980s, this prophetic fantasy forecast is Michael Savage's semi-serious alarm of a nightmarish future. I don't know whether people are going to go for it or not, but I believe it's an important Jonathan Swift type of book. Let's put it to you that way. And it was based upon a lot of Jonathan Swift's insights to the society of his time. In a sense, I mean, not copying Jonathan Swift, but it was what Jonathan Swift did in his time, I try to do in my time. The cover art is one of my watercolors, one of my primitive childish watercolors. I have maybe 24 of them that I will release at a time in the future during a phase I was painting very heavily about a year or two ago. And the watercolors from artists who have looked at them are considered to be of interest to some people. They're simple and they're primitive, I understand that, but nevertheless they're unique and of some interest. I took one of them and made it the cover art to Xenon. Maybe you want to check it out on Kindle. Just get on any device or whatever. What I love about this is I didn't have to go through a whole editorial board. I wasn't looking for an advance. I wasn't looking for a marketing campaign. It's a very complicated thing, and I have the greatest publisher in the world, the absolute greatest publisher. I've had one hit after another with them. Trump's War, God, Faith, and Reason. They're the best, absolutely the best, and they put their heart and soul into my books, and I really appreciate it. This is simple. It's a different kind of thing. It is a short science fiction fantasy. So if you want to take that roller coaster with me, go ahead and check it out. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
We're living through very dangerous times, and I'm asking you, who is behind the Hollywood purges? Who is behind the purges of men in America? I think I found someone who may be involved. By her own admission, she's a rabid dog on the issue. And you can see Miss Melissa Silverstein, the founder of Women in Hollywood, big hashtagger. Ms. Silverstein, who grew up on Long Island, of course, and works from a Brooklyn apartment, has long focused on women's causes. Let me ask you something. When did women's causes become hating men? When did women's causes become destroying men's lives? Is that a woman's cause? After graduating from Brandeis University, no kidding, Brandeis University, it's like a rodeo of insanity. She worked for organizations like the Ms. Foundation and the White House Project, a now defunct nonprofit dedicated to increasing female representation in business and government. You see, it's all about money. In 2007, Ms. Silverstein started a blog to push for gender diversity, quote-unquote, in the film industry. She said, I didn't trust my voice at first, but I slowly put myself out there and started to get noticed. Ms. Silverstein said, now I'm kind of a rabid dog, she added with a chuckle. She's encouraging abused women to come forward. And she has hashtags such as hashtag catch the bastards and hashtag believe women. Now, we all know rape is about the worst thing you can do to anyone. I've said this for over 15 years. It's about the worst thing you can do to a person is rape them. Men, women, you name it. And, of course, sexual harassment is real. It's deadly. It destroys people, destroys their souls. And we all want it punished. But as people have said, there is a big difference between rape and touching someone's shoulder. Difference between rape and suggesting that you go on a date with someone. But now we come back to the issue of who and why. Who's getting it and who's not getting it. Who's getting it and who's not getting it. Steve Wynn, out as the CEO of the company that carries his name, accused by sexual harassment claims. Shocking tape uncovered of a 2003 interview with Quentin Tarantino on the Howard Stern Show, where he defends the statutory rape of a 13-year-old girl. And nothing happened to Tarantino. Now, why did they destroy Steve Wynn and not Tarantino? Well, there's a reason for that. You could say it's because Steve Wynn allegedly committed certain acts, but Tarantino is not being accused of any harassment. All Tarantino did on the Stern Show was defend the child rapist. Isn't that interesting? And so I've read you the list, and I ask you again, how do you feel about living in America during a witch hunt? We kept hearing about the Salem witch trials. How many witches who were tried, or girls who were tried during the Salem witch trials, are actually innocent? Many, we were told. But it was based on what? Mass hysteria. And you're telling me now there's no mass hysteria in the United States of America? Oh, I would disagree with you on that one. And so, look, I'm talking about a subject that's important to all of us, the hashtag MeToo hurricane. Big story today, Polanski, Quentin Tarantino, the interview on Stern. It's shocking, actually. But it's penetrating our religions. As you well know, liberal Judaism has become feminized for so long that there's almost no remnant of Judaism left in it. It's Judaism with a twist. And the twist is such that you don't even recognize the religion when you walk into those temples. Or Episcopalianism. You go into a temple with a female priest, and now they're pushing a, quote, gender-neutral God. God wasn't good enough for them. They now have to twist the Bible. Listen to clip 3 if you think I'm making all this up.
The resolution says, asks us to draw on multiple images of God, masculine, feminine, and wide diversity that's found in Scripture, that we will, as you said, alluded to, if we decide to rewrite our prayers, what we use for prayers and worship, we want to draw on that. We don't want to take away anything. We want to add on to.
Oh, you want to add on to man. You can't add on to God, idiot. All you can do is destroy God with your liberalism, which has destroyed everything it's touched. So, Reverend Ken Dyer, D.C. Episcopalians pushing a gender-neutral God. Again, this is all part of my nightmarish vision of the future that we are already in. What's coming next? Read Xenon, you'll see what's coming next. Hate crimes, based upon thought crimes, based upon pre-crimes, read by a triumvirate of women from Brooklyn who determine whether or not you committed a thought crime.
Savage.
This is the Savage Nation. Where does the time go? The school shooter who killed all those children was crazy, waving guns around. He said he was going to do it. The FBI was warned in Miami. The FBI did nothing because they were too busy cooking up an indictment against Donald Trump. You talk about a failure of a major agency. This is terrifying that they would go this far. They would go so far as to take a nation that is still in shock and mourning while the bodies are still in morgues and release this nothing indictment just to cover up their own failure. This is something that you would not see in a banana republic because they would not get away with it in a banana republic. In a banana republic, even a newspaper, which doesn't exist in this country, would point out the fallacies and the fraudulent nature of releasing such a so-called indictment against foreign nationals at a time like that a nation is in mourning. They wouldn't tolerate it. If they ever did this in Chile, the Chileans would have really reacted very strongly to the newspaper that would dare spit on the dead bodies, kick the dead bodies, disrespect the dead bodies of those children. You heard me right. There's an emotional element to this. What agency on earth would be run by such ghouls as to do a thing like this 2 days after the school shooting? In other words, let us say there's an indictment to be made on foreign nationals meddling in our election. Let's assume there is such an indictment that should be made. Why today? The question is the timing. It's very strange, isn't it? The nation's in mourning. The only answer is because the FBI itself failed to stop the shooting, and they're doing this to cover up their failures. Now, that's something any rational person who has a logical mind can figure out. Don't expect that from the late-night stoners or the pancake made-up talkers. You can expect it from me, because that's my analysis. And that's why you pay to come into the tent in which I preach, because you're always going to get a different analysis than you'd expect. And very often the analysis that I give you is the correct one. 99.9% of the time, my analytical skills never fail me, and they're not failing me right now. This is a gigantic conspiracy and a cover-up on the part of the agency that failed to stop the school shooting. Now, as far as the Russians go, what actually did they do? Well, they did nothing different than Obama has done. They did nothing different than the Democrats and the Republicans do. What do they actually do? Disinformation? Isn't that what Nancy Pelosi engages in on a daily basis? Going so far as to tell us that even her grandson's been brainwashed into wishing he was of brown skin and brown eyes. He wishes he was a different race because he's ashamed of his own race. Is that not an example of brainwashing and disinformation on a very personal and very tragic level? Both parties engage in disinformation campaigns. So what's the problem here? Oh, I see foreign nationals aren't allowed to do it. Then why did he do it against Israel and other countries? Where's that indictment? D.C. Rock Mueller indicts 13 Russians. Trolls of 2016. So the first you hear is, oh my God, they got Trump. But no, actually the opposite is true. The indictment says the Russians worked with unwitting participants. So there's no linkage to anyone in the Trump campaign. What this indictment does is not indict Trump. It actually clears Trump. But the only question that Americans should be asking today is why would an agency show such insensitivity and thuggishness at that to have released such a blockbuster allegation or indictment on a day like today, 2 days after a school shooting of monumental proportions, when the bodies are still cold in morgues, when the FBI itself was found to have failed to stop this kid Cruz, this 19-year-old madman. The Florida governor is saying the director of the FBI must resign immediately. He's 100% right. Just came out, by the way. Governor Scott called for FBI director to resign in wake of Florida school shooting. He said the FBI's failure to take action against this killer is unacceptable. 100% right? The FBI is admitting it didn't follow protocols. They were tipped on January 5th that he was about to kill people. They did nothing. Why didn't they do anything? Are they incompetent? Or is it they were so given over to indicting Trump and everyone around him that all hands were on deck facing not the Titanic of the shooter, but a wave, a 3-foot wave that was coming up at the stern of the ship? This agency's in real trouble. And so, again, when you leave this show and you'll hear it all day and tonight and Sunday, ask yourself one question that no one's asking yet, which is, why would the FBI do it today? Timing is everything. This is the most ill-timed announcement I've ever seen in my entire professional life on air. You do a thing like this, do it on a day when people can pay attention to it. This is a 3-day weekend coming up, President's Weekend. We can't say Washington anymore or Lincoln anymore. They were stolen from us by the radical left. We can only say Martin Luther King Jr. as a name or Cesar Chavez, but we cannot say Washington or Lincoln. But it's President's Day weekend, not Washington, not Lincoln. It's President's Day weekend, 3-day weekend. Why today? Because they're covering up their failures. So I want to go back to the school shooting because America's still in great pain. Horrible shock. I know. I myself am dizzy. It's dizzying for me. I have not been the same. I haven't slept well. I'm not eating well. I'm eating very well. I'm eating 3-4 meals at a time. I'm exhibiting all the signs of high anxiety over the school shooting. There's no place safe left in America. No place, nothing safe anymore. Where is there safety in this country? Tell me. A church gets shut up. A school gets shut up. Where? Where is there safety in America? No one knows which way to turn anymore. It's affecting everybody that I know. You can't pretend it isn't. You can make believe you're a big macho dude, that it doesn't affect you. Then you'd be a madman. It should affect you. There's a story of a child on an 8-hour flight from Germany to Newark who was screaming for 8 straight hours with a tantrum. The mother did nothing. The child was banging the ceiling, banging chairs. No one could do anything because if the flight attendants had said anything, the mother would have sued the airline with the help of the ACLU. Because, you see, children have unlimited rights to do anything they want. You don't want to interfere with their creativity. So everyone on the airplane had to listen to the toddler's 8-hour demonic screaming tantrum on the international flight. The mother didn't control him. She let him do whatever he wanted, running up and down the aisle. Now, what does this have to do with the shooter? Everything and nothing. Everything and nothing. Yesterday I said it's time for the preventive detention of dangerous youths on drugs. He could have been and should have been. He certainly shouldn't have owned an AR-15. How did he buy one a year ago? If he had been thrown out of high school because he was a troublemaker, and he was in a school for troublemakers, why should he have been allowed to buy an AR-15? Tell me why there was nothing in the background check which asked about that. Like, have you ever been removed from a school? Why were the schools not contacted? Why? Because of permissiveness on every level, left, right, and center. Look at the poor children who were killed. He was reported to the FBI months ago, according to a logger. The FBI did nothing. The FBI was too busy trying to prove a case of collusion between Russia and Donald Trump. They were all occupied, the FBI. They didn't have time for a thing like this. Under Mueller and whoever's running the FBI now, they had one job at the FBI, making sure that Donald Trump is indicted for something he didn't do. So, Psycho Killer is now seen cowering and shaking as he was led into jail. The female lawyer who was assigned to him was seen patting him on the shoulder. Can you believe what a lawyer does? Does she now know she's the most hated person in the United States of America? I could see giving him a defense. I don't know what the defense is. I don't see any defense here. Oh, this poor child lost his mother to the flu, and as a result he went crazy. So you have to release him now from prison. No, that's not the answer. We need to reopen the mental hospitals closed by Governor Jerry Brown's liberal father. Gun control needs to be discussed. An AR-15 is not meant for hunting deer. It's made for killing people in a combat situation. So there's a lot of talking to be done now. That's the place to do it, on talk radio. Why is there no middle ground on gun control? Tell me why there's no middle ground. First of all, we don't know who this maniac 19-year-old kid is. We know he belonged in a mental hospital. He was signaling that he was nuts. He was a gun nut. He liked to kill animals. He also dressed as a communist and supported ISIS. What does that mean? That CNN didn't pick up on. The pictures on michaelsavage.com of this SOB maniac dressed as a communist with a hammer and sickle and supported ISIS with his Allahu Akbar inquiries. But you didn't see that from Andy Cooper. Andy Cooper only reported he was a member of a white supremacist group. So the maniac was a maniac. He killed 17 people. Hero Coach, the children, and we're all pointing fingers and saying, don't do anything. as you well expect, Andy Cooper automatically says he's a white supremacist, ban guns. That's the knee-jerk liberal response. The knee-jerk conservative response is don't touch our guns because we may need them to defend ourselves against some imaginary, I don't know, a militia, I don't know who they're afraid of. I don't know who you're going to defend. What, you're imagining street thugs come into your neighborhood, you're going to defend yourself like some John Wayne hero, and you'll be the last of the Mohegans holding down the fort. I don't know what you need the gun for, truthfully. You know, what do you need an AR-15 for? Why? You're a hunter. Can't you hunt with another weapon? Why must you have an AR-15? A deer is already outgunned. You know, you used to hunt deer with a bow and arrow, the last I remember. Then you could hunt with a single-shot target rifle, and then the deer doesn't stand a chance. Why don't you just get a helicopter, buy a military helicopter and go deer hunting? So, look, I can do an absurd analysis here. Who is this guy? I know his name is Cruz, but he's adopted. So everybody has a finger to point. Everyone has someone to blame. Even the Treasury Secretary, Mnuchin, who's, by the way, a brilliant guy, signaled some support for gun control. He's the only one who had the guts to even say it, because you know what's going to happen the minute you say gun control. I saw what happened when I put it up on my Twitter. Savage, go back to Berkeley. Savage, go back to Berkeley. Savage, your liberal roots are showing. I also said other things. I said time for preventive detention of dangerous youths on drugs. And while we're talking about youths on drugs who commit mass murder like this, what drugs was he on? Oh, that we're not allowed to know. We know what gun he used. What drug was he on? Who manufactures it? What are the side effects? And by the way, while we're at it, was he on medical marijuana? Oh, you crazy, Savage. Marijuana makes people peaceful. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The new strains of marijuana are so powerful it makes people paranoid and insane, by the way. And while you're at it, research this. You know what hashish is, right? Do you know where the word hashish comes from? It's from the Arabic. Its root is assassin. Because from Middle Ages on, Arabic assassins smoked hashish before going out on killing sprees. Did you know that? It can make people totally crazy and able to commit mayhem and murder. So, you know, you want to start looking into these things. Time for preventive detention of dangerous youths on drugs. Check that, yes. What about the medication he was on? Side effects of the SSRIs. I've talked about it before and yesterday. What else was he on? What other drugs was he on? Now, what about the ACLU and liberal judges and the ACLU? Why are they not being talked about, letting these people go wild in the streets? Be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
Now, the question is what's going on in our society if there are so many shootings? Let's put the guns aside for one moment. I've given you my position on it. I don't even want to talk about the assault weapon situation. I published an article on it. I talked about it for 2 days. I said that we need some gun control, and I know that that's the third rail of talk radio. But you know what? Hey, I'm that kind of guy. I'm not one of the cowards who's going to say don't touch our guns ever for any reason. That's absurd, stupid, absolutely the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. We already have restrictions on our First Amendment. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. The First Amendment does not permit you to have absolute freedom to say anything you want, nor does the Second Amendment have an absolute blanket regard to all kinds of weaponry. You cannot own a machine gun. You can't own a tank. You can't own a howitzer. You can't own an artillery piece. Why? Because there are reasonable restrictions on what the Second Amendment means. It's not a blanket statement. Anyone can run around with a machine gun. So we need to look at the kind of weapons that people have and why they have them and whether they need them and whether they don't need them. I don't want to argue over it. Please don't call me about the conspiracy, the government's coming to get you, and you're going to be the last of the Mohegans in your doorway holding off an army. Please, I don't want to hear it anymore. Most of the people who think that are paranoid lunatics, living in a bunker somewhere waiting for the government to come get them. I myself don't have that fear or fantasy. For one reason, I've just watched the civil war in Syria. Tell me how an entire militia with RPGs, tanks, artillery shells can get wiped out. Because even that amount of weaponry isn't going to stop it if a government wants to get you. So stop being stupid for 2 minutes. Stop with the government conspiracy, which means you have to hold off the whole government in your doorway while Millie is hiding in the closet. It ain't going to happen. You don't need the assault weapon. So what do? You have an AR-15? Well, they can be modified. See, I'm talking guns, which I never wanted to do. I'll make it simple again for those of you who are afraid of guns. The gunophobes on ABC, CBS, and NBC. The gunophobic people who, if they hear a backfire in the streets of New York on the way to their bulletproof limousine to talk about conservatives, would probably have to go to Bellevue Hospital for a Thorazine shot if they heard a backfire, let alone a gunfire. I'm trying to tell you that we have every right to own our guns. I've read the Second Amendment. It's been upheld by the Supreme Court. Even Heller has been upheld. I remember when Sotomayor in the Supreme Court was being confirmed, she said, it's clear to me that Heller, that's the analysis of that Second Amendment. Heller has been upheld in the Supreme Court. That's it. It's the end of the story. But the question is, how far do you go with Heller? Of course we have a right to bear arms. We don't have a right to bear tanks and airplanes. Okay, so that's my whole point. That's number one. Number two, reopen the mental hospitals closed by the liberals in the 1960s. The whole concept of dumping mentally ill people on the street has failed the country miserably. It's a money cow for so-called community mental health centers, which are costing us more than the mental hospitals would have and would cost us if they were reopened. So reopen the mental hospitals that were closed. Give these people the desperate treatment that they need. If we did, this kid, the shooter, would have been in a nut house a long time ago. Cops are called to his house more than 35 times. But because of the rats from New York City who went to Florida and poisoned the mind of the Floridians, they ruined Florida. They destroyed southern Florida with the same garbage that has ruined New York.
Savage.
Thank you for listening to the show at the Savage Nation.